Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the extended connectivity track. So joining us for this next session, we have Allan Pym, Chief Operating Officer at APOS Systems, and he will be sharing his talk on how extending SAP Analytics Cloud with hundreds of data sources through embedded connectivity with CData. Allan, we are so glad to have you join us today, and I will let you take it away.
Great, thanks, Marie. I will just test getting my slides shared out here, so please let me know when you can see those.
They look great.
Okay, good stuff. All right, so I will get things started. I want to talk a little bit about the story that we've had in our work with CData, and yeah, just give you a bit of sense of that. So my role at the company is heading up the operational team, and really all things go to market. And this is a journey that I've been on for quite a while. It's been close to 25 years. So I'm one of the principals in the company. And so, yeah, we're a Canadian-based company based just outside of Toronto in Canada. And as you'll see here, our focus is on BI and analytics. So really the key topics that we'll be talking about today, we'll talk about this need that we've had for creating comprehensive connectivity, where that fits into our journey as an SAP BI and analytics partner, what brought us to the topic of build versus buy, and then look at how we are integrating into our connectivity layer with the CData components. We'll talk about how that's helped to remove barriers for us, and then what that's going to mean for us going forward with our solution as well. So APOS, we are a longtime SAP BI and analytics partner. We've been working for over 25 years in this space, and we build enhancement solutions for the SAP BI and analytics. So for a very long time, that has meant working with the Business Objects platform, which some of you may know very well, very long-standing and very well-trusted BI platform. But it also encompasses our work with the newer SAP BI and analytics platform called SAP Analytics Cloud. That's actually going to be the core of what we'll be talking about today, is the solutions that we have for SAP Analytics Cloud. And we have two, one of which is a report publishing, report broadcasting solution. And the other is our APOS Data Gateway, which of course will be our focus today. The topic of creating comprehensive connectivity. So I think I need to give you some background of the SAP Analytics environment, and specifically the SAP Analytics Cloud. So if you hear me say SAC or Analytics Cloud, I'm referring to the SAP Analytics Cloud environment. And even though some of the names are of some of the terms that I'll be mentioning here might be familiar and seem familiar, they have some nuance when we're talking about the Analytics Cloud environment. And so I want to be specific in some of the definitions. So there's these two modes of connectivity. One is import connection, and the other is live connection. So the import connection, as you recognize that Analytics Cloud is this cloud-based analytics environment where all the analytics processes happen in that cloud environment. The import connection means that data needs to be moved into the Analytics Cloud environment. So then it's local within that cloud environment, and all of the analytics processes happen there. For a live connection, though, this is a specialized connection where data does not have to be moved from the source database into Analytics Cloud. There's a really quite unique communication pattern that happens so that analytics processes happen on data that's not resident within the Analytics Cloud environment. This is really the key to what we're talking about with the Live Data Gateway, because it's one of the modules within our larger solution called APOS Data Gateway that's bringing really expanded and unique value to SAP Analytics Cloud customers. So keeping in mind those two modes of connectivity, we're going to be focusing on live connectivity and where Live Data Gateway brings all of the value add. So really the value proposition for that live connectivity, and what we're bringing is that data doesn't need to be moved. It's being able to use built-in security. It's meaning the data is always current as it is in the built-in built-in data source, and the data never leaves the firewall. That'll become a little more clear here in a moment when I explain the communication process that's happening. Where APOS is adding value, though, is SAP does a terrific job of live connections to their sources. Where they have not been focused on is on non-SAP sources, which is where the APOS Live Data Gateway is fitting in and bringing added value. Of course, non-SAP sources is a very long list of data sources, and that's really the value that we're bringing. So architecturally, our solution has really three functional layers. One is the data virtualization layer. And this is where we're making raw communication to underlying data sources. And you're seeing all kinds of different data sources listed there. And we're connecting primarily through JDBC to these varied range of data sources. But at this data virtualization layer, data connection layer, this is where we're establishing communication with those sources. And also where we're handling security within our solution and being able to respect database security, being able to address things like SSO. The second layer, though, is the data preparation layer. And this is essentially our semantic layer. So this is a live data gateway semantic layer where there's a few different kinds of views that can be prepared and run. And this is where things like measures and dimensions are defined, where it's controlled what data fields are exposed to the end users who are building analytics, links and joins, and all of these sort of technical mechanisms are handled at a central layer, and then this semantic layer gets shared out with the users who want to build reports and consume reports. So the interface for that semantic layer is that we have a web interface, which opens up lots of interesting possibilities that I'll mention here. And as a web interface, and more importantly, as a interface that's really kind of point and click, it doesn't require a heavy technical user to be able to build these views. And so as a result, this means we're really entering into the area of self-service modeling, not just self-serve analytics, but self-service modeling. So measures, dimensions, joins, links, prompts. We also get into things like handling geospatial data, handling hierarchical data, so turning non-hierarchical data into hierarchical data. And so there's some really interesting things that are happening there, and lots of unique value that's happening there. But then that brings us to the consumption layer. And this is where behind the scenes, we're handling a whole lot of complexities that allow us to address this communication pattern that I mentioned with SAP Analytics Cloud, so that it truly is this live connection. So the communication pattern, I'll mention quickly. This is essentially where a user, a browser-based user, SAP Analytics Cloud user, is making a request to the Analytics Cloud environment. But because there's no data local to it, it says, okay, well, this is a live connection. You'll need to get the data elsewhere, but I can give you some other information about where should the chart be, where should the graph be, those sorts of presentation details. From there, though, it's also passing instructions about where to find Live Data Gateway and what information is being requested. So the Live Data Gateway picks up those requests, gets those requests onto the data source processes those requests, and then the results of those queries get streamed back to that user's browser. And this is where, at that browser level, where the metadata from SAC and the stream data from Live Data Gateway come together in the user's browser, and they're rendered there. That's as far as the data goes, though. So we're not storing any data in our solution, and data is not going anywhere beyond that browser. So back to the topic of data not leaving the firewall. So that's interesting. And I realize that this is very specific to Analytics Cloud, but I think it's important that you understand how those communication processes have been happening. So that brings us to the core challenge. It's not just the APOS core challenge, but really the core challenge of Analytics Cloud users who want to connect to non-SAP data sources is this just isn't supported through Analytics Cloud. So a live connection to non-SAP sources is not part of SAC functionality. So that's a pretty big factor. But like all customers, even SAP customers have lots of different data sources that they want to connect to beyond SAP. And it's not a short list, it's a long list of customer systems that need to be connected to. So with all of those factors built in, this has created the customer challenge, but it's also created the challenge for APOS in delivering solutions to a long list of data sources. It's meant that we have to be able to support those data sources, and at the data virtualization layer, be able to connect and communicate with those data sources. So this was really the core challenge. That being, do we build those connectors at the virtualization layer, at the connectivity layer of our solution, or do we buy those? And so in order for us as an organization to be able to support all those different data sources that customers are asking us about, this really is the challenge. If we can't communicate with those data sources, the data preparation layer, the semantic layer, and the communication layer really don't serve a purpose without that raw communication with the data source. So for our organization, this really was not a difficult decision at all. We're not in a position to be able to build data drivers to all of these unique data sources. Yes, there are industry standard sources, JDBC drivers out there for many of the sources that we want to deal with, but we're always being proposed or requested to other unique sources. And so being able to fulfill this is really at the heart of the challenge for us. So buy became a clear option, an option of necessity in order for us to very quickly and easily be able to say yes to these requests that were coming in about organizations connecting to a wide range of sources. So in our work in addressing this challenge, we got in conversation with CData, and it became very clear to us that the wide range of drivers that CData provides, that was a big factor for us. It allows us to say yes to more and more customers about the unique sources that they have. CData has coverage for most, if not all, of the items that come up for us. But it goes beyond just the quantity. We found that the quality of these drivers has been quite good, and at a personnel level, we recognized very quickly in our discussions with CData there was strong, deep technical expertise within the CData team. So those, of course, are critical for us and our reputation in the market to be able to have that sort of quality behind the scenes. So what have we done with all of these drivers? Well, it's meant that we're integrating essentially any CData JDBC driver that's available. We're integrating that into our data virtualization layer, so that those drivers become part of the targeted download of our solution, and being able to have those drivers resident for our customers. We have licensing in place that controls whether the driver is accessible. And of course, if there isn't a license there, the driver can't be used. So that's lots of controls that we have in place. And really, this mechanism in place and the license being utilized, this then allows for the raw communication to happen. And then the data preparation layer, our semantic layer, and the communication layer are now fully functional for those sources as well. So this has meant that barriers have been removed for us. So instead of having to answer the question, no, we don't support that data source, this has allowed us to very easily and very commonly to be able to say, yes, we can support that source. And we just know, because we know that CData, we can look it up and see that CData has a driver for that source. And so that really takes care of the concerns there. Allowed us a much broader coverage. So that expanded connectivity, removal of barriers, it really has allowed us to focus on our unique value, which is at that data preparation layer and at the data connectivity layer, data communication layer, to be able to handle that unique communication with SAP Analytics Cloud. interesting success story with one of our customers who, large global heavy equipment manufacturer. They're, in addition to their SAP sources, they had some needs to be able to connect to SQL Server, but also to Google Analytics and Salesforce, those two in particular. They were very focused on being able to get some expanded sales and marketing data exposed out to their information consumers, as well as general corporate KPIs that they wanted to address. But all of this was enabling them to expand their usage of SAP Analytics Cloud to needs that go beyond just the SAP data sources. So the solution that they were focused on, I'll talk about this one worldview and what that means, but really this was all about making their Analytics Cloud deployment a more complete platform for them to hit these wider range of sources. The one world view is very interesting because this is it's actually a manufacturing plant, both executive offices and manufacturing plant where this has its primary use. And this is a very large back screen display that members from the production floor, as well as members of the executive team, all have visibility to. And I don't mean on their individual desktops, I mean in a very large screen. So it's quite unique, and they're pulling together data from all of these different sources and presenting these KPIs and other sales information into this large display. So it's quite unique that what they're doing, and we've had some terrific feedback from this customer about how the connectivity is working, how our solution is providing really useful, valuable, and its capabilities to deliver on what we said. So as we look ahead at what's coming up for us with this solution and the connectivity that's inherent, the first thing is, extending the connectivity layer as needed. Well, for us, that becomes just sort of how does CData extend their connectivity layer, right? They have the ability to add new drivers, which of course we're always paying attention to, so that we can find more scenarios to say yes to. Data source federation, so really blending of data. This is a topic that we are now active in the early stages on, so we'll be doing more in that area. We'll be making, of course, incremental improvements in all areas of our technologies. But lastly, the whole concept in being able to support additional platforms. I've talked about how SAP Analytics Cloud is the focus of our solution today. The solution's been built in such a way to fit those very particular needs of Analytics Cloud, but giving consideration, of course, to other new platforms is always a factor. Right as part of that, though, and I think is quite particular for this audience today, we are also open to working with independent software vendors who may find the idea of a semantic layer and a connection layer and a communication layer as something that having that centralized would be of value. So if that's a scenario that you're in and something like those capabilities that I've mentioned, of course, that's a topic we'd be very interested and open to talking about as well. So Marie, that covers off the key details that I was hoping to address today.
That's great. Thank you, Allan, for sharing that. That was a great story on your journey and kind of how you think about connectivity within your broader product offering. And so my first question for you to follow up on that really picks up the thread of the last thing you shared with the audience. And it's, more information or more detail on if the live data gateway works with more than just the SAP Analytics Cloud, or how are you thinking about developing that in the future?
Yeah, so lots to be determined about that, but on the communication layer, we do have some additional protocols, such as OData, where data from our solution can be just consumed as OData, and we'll see what other protocols we look to pursue in the future. That's going to be opportunity driven, but that's a good example, yeah.
That's great. And you talked about the semantic layer and how that fits into your product offering and what that layer looks like as it relates to the connectivity layer that you have within your platform as well. But I was wondering if you could share more about the capabilities of that semantic layer, what does it cover and what benefit that offers your customers?
So I mentioned the term self-service modeling, and we often hear from customers about self-service analytics, and that's important. Having the ability for those simplified data views to be available for someone who's building a report but shouldn't have access to everything, or doesn't have the know-how to be able to make sense of everything that they're getting access to. Having that semantic layer in the middle makes their process is much more straightforward, but it also shields some additional data, them from some data access that really adds to the whole data governance story. But because we've made this as a web-based interface, it has meant that a much less sophisticated or technical user can create those views. And that's where that term of self-service modeling comes in. So we're simplifying on a couple of different levels. But then I mentioned a couple of concepts like the ability to handle geospatial data, the ability to turn non-hierarchical data into hierarchical data. That is something that's been very well received by our customers in their analytics processes. So those would be a couple of simplification, but also expanded capability.
That's great. And one question that we discussed with Jack in our prior session that I would love to pose to you, Allan, is to understand how you monitor the customer experience with integrations and how they're getting data into the platform. So how do you work with customers? How do you monitor that from your perspective to understand our customers are being successful getting data in, they're doing it in the right way, and that experience is working for them?
Yeah, well, straight out of the gate, we know pretty quickly if connectivity is not working. And that's usually handled up front in the initial deployment work. We don't have too many scenarios where connectivity stops working downline. There may be elements, features, functions that need a tweak here or there in future evolutions. But yeah, I think quality control on the way in, that's really kind of the key factor, which has been an important part of our reliance on CData and your quality control, and being able to rely on that and trust on that.
That's great. And my last question for you, Allan, today, and again, one of my favorites that the audience has heard before is, what advice would you give someone in a similar position that relies on connectivity, that is trying to figure out how to scale this up for their business?
Yeah. I think the topics that I mentioned at the buy versus build slide are applicable not just to us, but anybody. It's a quantity and quality. I think we're unique in that we have a very significant quantity need. It's not, there's probably a smaller set of organizations like ours who are providing a solution where it's a very long list of data sources needed. I may be wrong on that, but that's my hunch. So I guess making sure that the connector is handled, that it's in place, but then turning to quality and knowing that the connector itself functions, it has the capabilities that it needs to. But for us, knowing that the capabilities of the organization that we were partnering with and the organization themselves was steady, solid, that's a pretty key factor. And again, back to our good standing with our customers depends on not only the quality, quantity, but the ability to respond to challenges that come up. So that's, I think those are pretty common sense thoughts that really anybody should be thinking about going into a relationship like this.
Absolutely. Well, that's great, Allan. I think that is all the time we have for questions. So again, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing that presentation on your journey working through connectivity with CData.